Walk past any American perennial garden in late July, and you will see the same thing repeated in yard after yard after yard. Daylilies that were spectacular 3 weeks ago, covered in bloom, vivid and abundant, now sitting in various stages of decline. Brown spent flowers accumulating on the stalks, seed pods developing where blooms used to be. Some gardeners have already taken a pair of shears to the whole clump and cut it to 6 inches because they assumed the season was finished. Others have walked past and decided to deal with it in fall. Both of those responses are mistakes, and both of them are costing gardeners either the remaining flowers their daylilies were still planning to produce, or the energy reserves those plants need to return strongly next spring. Here is the one thing that changes how you manage daylilies from July through August. Stop looking at the calendar and start looking at the plant. Not every daylily in America is at the same stage right now just because it is the same month. A daylily in Zone 4 Minnesota is likely at peak bloom in July. That same variety in Zone 8, Georgia, may have peaked in May and be preparing for a rebloom cycle right now. What the plant is actually doing determines every decision you make. The date on the calendar determines nothing. Today I am giving you exactly what your daylilies need right now, and exactly what most gardeners are doing to them in July and August that is hurting their performance for the rest of this season and every season after it. Drop your US state or USDA zone in the comments right now. Daylily management in July looks completely different depending on your zone and what your specific plants are currently doing. I read every single one. Let's go. The single most important fact about daylilies most gardeners have never been told. A daylily flower lasts exactly 1 day. That is where the name comes from. One flower opens, displays through the day, and fades by evening. Most gardeners know this. What most gardeners do not fully understand is what that means for the flower stalk. The scape. That flower was attached to. A single daylily scape is not a one-flower stem. It is a branching structure that carries multiple buds, sometimes 10, sometimes 30, sometimes significantly more on a well-established plant in ideal conditions. The flower that opened yesterday was one bud on that scape. The flower opening today is a different bud. The flowers that will open tomorrow and the day after are buds that have not opened yet and are still developing on the same stalk. This is the biology that makes the most common July daylily mistake so damaging. A gardener sees several brown spent flowers on a scape, assumes the stalk is finished, and cuts the entire thing at ground level, removing every remaining bud that had not yet opened. The plant loses days or weeks of remaining bloom from one uninspected cut. Before you remove any daylily flower stalk, any scape, ever, in July or August, follow it from the base all the way to the tip. Look at every branch. If there are firm closed buds anywhere on that stalk, leave it. The old flowers are done. The stalk is not. Remove only the spent individual blooms and let the remaining buds continue developing. A completely finished scape has nothing left. No firm buds. No developing seed pods that you want to keep. Every bud has opened and faded. That is the only scape you should be removing at ground level. Tell me in the comments, how many of you have cut a daylily scape in July and then noticed the remaining buds on the cut stalk lying on the ground? Drop your state and tell me what variety it was. I read every single one. Deadheading. What it actually does and what it cannot do. Spent daylily flowers left on the plant are not just unsightly, they are a resource drain. Once a spent flower gets successfully pollinated, which happens easily in any garden with bees present, the plant begins investing energy into developing a seed pod. That energy is coming from somewhere. It is coming from the bud development, root reserves, and flowering capacity you want the plant directing elsewhere. Remove spent daylily flowers as consistently as you can through peak bloom season. Daily deadheading during the height of bloom keeps the plant looking clean, prevents unnecessary seed production, and allows you to inspect every scape carefully for remaining buds while you are working. That combination of benefits costs you 5 minutes per plant per session and delivers meaningfully better bloom management through the entire summer. Here is what most gardening content tells you that is not completely accurate about daylily deadheading. It suggests that consistent deadheading causes daylilies to rebloom. It does not. Reblooming is a genetic characteristic of the cultivar. It is built into the variety's DNA. A daylily that is genetically a single-season bloomer cannot be transformed into a rebloomer by removing its spent flowers. If you want reblooming daylilies, buy varieties specifically labeled and documented as rebloomers. Stella d'Oro, Happy Returns, Rosy Returns, and Chicago Apache are among the most reliable reblooming varieties in American gardens. What deadheading does do is prevent seed production, improve appearance, and support the plant's overall energy management. Those are valuable outcomes. They are just not the same as triggering rebloom in a variety that was never going to rebloom. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. This channel puts out real zone-specific perennial knowledge every single week that most gardening content gets partially wrong or skips entirely. Free. 2 seconds. Hit it now. Water. The need most gardeners underestimate in July. Daylilies have a reputation as tough, drought-tolerant plants. That reputation is accurate for established plants in terms of survival. Surviving a dry July and performing at full capacity through a dry July are completely different outcomes. And most American gardeners are getting survival when their plants are capable of performance. During active bloom, daylilies need consistent root zone moisture. Approximately 1 inch of water per week is the baseline. Adjusted upward for sandy soils that drain fast, containers that dry completely between waterings, and gardens in zones 7 through 10 where July heat is extreme. The watering mistake that limits daylily performance more than any other in American gardens. Shallow surface watering that wets the mulch and the top inch of soil, but never reaches the root zone where daylily roots are actually growing. Daylily roots extend 8 to 10 inches below the soil surface. Water that penetrates only the top inch evaporates before the roots ever access it. The plant is technically being watered every day and is simultaneously water stressed. Water deeply, slowly, infrequently. Apply enough water at each session that moisture reaches 8 to 10 inches of depth. Use a soil probe or a long screwdriver pushed into the ground to confirm penetration if you are uncertain. Then, let the surface dry before watering again. Daylilies in well-draining soil do not want to sit in perpetually wet conditions. They want deep moisture available and a surface that cycles through dry between waterings. Water at the base of the plant, not at the flowers. Overhead watering during bloom spotting can cause flower spotting and accelerate petal deterioration. During hot, dry periods when spider mites, the most common July daylily pest, are active, overhead watering spreads mite populations across the foliage more effectively than any wind. Direct the water at the soil. Every time, hit the like button right now. Every like tells YouTube this content is worth showing to American daylily gardeners who are watering every day and still watching their plants decline in July heat. Do not give your daylilies a summer haircut. This is the mistake that frustrates me most when I see it because it is so common and so completely unnecessary. A gardener watches the first major flush of daylily bloom slow down in July. The spent flower stalks look messy. The whole clump looks a little tired compared to its peak, and they take shears to the entire plant, cutting every leaf down to 5 or 6 inches because they read somewhere that this is what you do with daylilies after bloom. That instruction exists for one specific situation. When you are digging a daylily, dividing it, and replanting the divisions. The foliage is cut short to reduce transplant stress and make the divisions easier to handle. That is a transplanting protocol. It is not a routine summer maintenance recommendation for established plants that are not being moved. Here is what those green leaves are doing right now in July after the first bloom flush slows. They are photosynthesizing. They are converting sunlight into carbohydrates that are flowing downward into the root system and being stored as energy reserves. Those reserves are what the plant draws on when it initiates a rebloom cycle. If it is a reblooming variety, those reserves are what the plant draws on to push through dormancy and emerge strongly next spring. Those reserves determine the size of next season's clumps, the number of scapes the plant produces, and the overall vigor of the display you get every subsequent year. Cut those green leaves off in July and you interrupt that energy storage at the precise moment it is most critical. The plant can replace the foliage. It will. But it will do so at the cost of the root reserves that we're building for next season. Remove dead leaves. Remove damaged leaves. Remove diseased leaves. Remove completely finished flower scapes. Leave every healthy green leaf exactly where it is. Subscribe right now. Hit the bell. The next video covers what happens to these same daylilies in August and fall, and what decisions you make now determine everything about that performance. Yellow leaves. What is normal and what is not. By late July, some yellowing in your daylily clumps is completely normal. Older outer leaves at the base of mature fans complete their productive life and yellow naturally. This is the plant cycling through its foliage, not a problem requiring intervention. Remove individual yellowing outer leaves cleanly and move on. The yellowing that is not normal follows specific patterns that tell you what you are actually dealing with. Daylily rust produces orange-yellow powdery spots on leaves and flower stalks. If you rub a suspicious leaf with a white tissue and the tissue comes away with orange or yellow residue, that is rust spores. Rust is a fungal disease that spreads through water, splash, and humid conditions. Remove affected leaves and switch to base watering immediately. Daylily leaf streak produces elongated yellow streaks that develop into brown damaged areas, usually progressing from the leaf tip downward. This is a fungal condition that responds to improved air circulation, base watering, and removal of affected tissue. Crown rot is the most serious yellowing scenario, and the most important one to identify correctly. When an entire fan, all the leaves emerging from one growing point, yellows simultaneously, and the base of those leaves is soft, discolored, or pulls away from the crown tissue easily, that is crown rot. Crown rot is caused by waterlogged soil and poor drainage. It does not respond to more water. It does not respond to fertilizer. It requires improved drainage, removal of the affected tissue, and a soil drench with diluted hydrogen peroxide to address the anaerobic pathogens causing the rot. The diagnosis determines the response. One yellow outer leaf is routine maintenance. A collapsing fan with a soft, discolored base is an urgent drainage and disease problem. Inspect before you treat. Every time. The fertilizer mistake that makes July worse. When a daylily looks tired in July, the instinct is to feed it. That instinct is wrong more often than it is right, and acting on it without diagnosing correctly wastes money and sometimes actively worsens the situation. A daylily suffering from dry soil does not need fertilizer. It needs water. A daylily with spider mites does not need fertilizer. It needs the mites addressed. A daylily in a severely crowded clump that has been declining for 2 seasons does not need fertilizer. It needs dividing. Adding nitrogen to any of these situations produces soft, lush foliage growth that looks like improvement and is not. If your daylilies are genuinely struggling in July, check these conditions before reaching for a fertilizer bag. Is the soil dry below the surface? Is the plant receiving adequate sun? Is the clump severely crowded? Is drainage poor around the root zone? Are pests or disease present? Address the actual problem, not the symptom. If none of those conditions apply and your daylilies are simply looking less vivid and vigorous than they did at peak bloom, that is not nutrient deficiency. That is a plant past its peak bloom period running its natural cycle. Leave it alone. Keep the green foliage. Keep watering deeply. Let the plant do what it is designed to do in the weeks after its main display. August and reblooming. What to actually look for. Before you write off your daylily garden for the season in August, spend 5 minutes inspecting the center of every clump. Reblooming varieties produce new scapes after their initial bloom cycle, and those new scapes emerge from the center of the clump, hidden among the existing foliage. Easy to miss on a quick walk past. A new scape looks exactly like the beginning of a flower stalk, a firm, upright stem emerging from the center crown. Distinctly different in texture from the flat leaf fans surrounding it. If you find new scapes developing in August, your plant is a confirmed rebloomer, and it is planning a second display. Protect it. Water it. Do not cut anything around it. Let it do its job. Varieties confirmed as reliable rebloomers in American gardens: Stella de Oro, Happy Returns, Rosy Returns, Chicago Apache, Bela Lugosi, and Pardon Me, among others. If you know your variety name, Look it up specifically for reblooming confirmation before assuming your August garden is finished. Here is your complete July and August daylily checklist before you go. Inspect every scape before cutting. If buds remain, leave the stalk. Remove individual spent flowers consistently through peak bloom. Cut only completely finished scapes at the base. Water deeply to 8 to 10 inches once or twice per week. Never shallow daily surface wetting. Direct water at soil level, never at flowers or foliage. Leave every healthy green leaf in place regardless of how tired the plant looks after peak bloom. Diagnose yellow leaves correctly before treating. Identify the pattern before you decide on the response. Do not fertilize a struggling plant before ruling out water, pest, drainage, and crowding issues. Inspect the center of every clump in August for new scapes before deciding the season is over. The biggest mistake is treating every daylily the same way in July because it is July. The plant in front of you determines every decision. The calendar determines nothing. Subscribe right now if you have not already. Hit the bell and drop 2 things in the comments. What state or zone you are gardening in and what your daylilies look like right now. I read every single comment. Your answers shape the next video directly. Now go inspect those scapes before you cut anything.